Today, I'm going to talk about macroeconomics and what macroeconomics can tell you about where AI is maybe going to go. And the potential punchline of this joke you can use to organize your thoughts as to why you should care is that we could have another AI winter where investment collapses, progress slows down, and people kind of stop caring for a while. Is this likely? I don't think so. Is it possible? Yes, it's very possible. And to see that it is, you just have to notice that AI is mostly not profitable right now for a lot of key famous actors that are providing it to you, really at a loss. It's consuming massive amounts of investor capital. And then a lot of those investors, a lot of the Wall Street crowd talks openly about, is this really ever going to pay off, or is this just a cool shiny toy that can never be cash flow positive? And if they decide it's never going to be cash flow positive, you get AI winter. So I'm going to talk about a few macroeconomic strands here. One is just general stuff about recession and inflation and how does that impact the funds that eventually get directed to being this investor capital that keeps the machine going. Tariffs and trade, I'll try to handle diplomatically, is another important one. And then these kind of all fit together into a story of, does AI really turn into a business that's profitable in the way your grandfather thought about business, or is it just a big WeWork explosion waiting to happen? Let's start with the general picture of inflation, interest rates, recession or not, and how does this affect the picture? It's been true and widely known a long time that tech investment is quite sensitive to interest rates. Low interest rates tend to produce a just big sloppy fire hose of money that goes into investing in new information technology, and then high interest rates are the opposite. If you look at what's going on in the AI world right now, well, who's really making money directly? People like NVIDIA. And who are they selling to? A lot of technology companies that are buying chips to do their own AI projects. And these AI projects are mostly not remotely profitable right now. It's about investing money in the hope that something is going to happen in the future. At the end of the day, how much money big tech companies can get for this kind of investment tends to track interest rates pretty closely. So heaven forbid, if we had a long period of time of high inflation that policymakers struggled to get a handle on, probably means interest rates have to stay high, probably means that there's not nearly as much investment in these AI projects, probably means NVIDIA doesn't make as much money. And it's worth noting this is really what's supposed to happen. The Fed manipulates interest rates up and down because it wants to manipulate how much money is floating around to be invested or not. It's interesting to note, my perception is that AI would probably be less sensitive to a recession because, once again, it's really not about selling products to consumers right now or being cash flow positive. It's, of course, worth noting that all of these things are all interpenetrated with each other. So a bad recession could still spiral around and make it true that this investment dried up as well. But I think it would be slightly more complicated. And if nothing else, you can find all kinds of people in finance news talking about how interest rates up and down drives tech spending. Moving on, we're at a crossroads where we're remodeling our trade posture with the rest of the world quite a bit, or at least trying to. And it's worth noting that AI seems to be a technology with pretty massive economies of scale. It's very expensive to create an LLM from scratch. Once you got it, you can use it forever for pretty cheap. You don't need as much fancy hardware. So this kind of cost structure tends to produce what's called natural monopoly. It doesn't make sense to have 100 firms making LLMs because whoever made the best one can just write it, and there's really no reason to go to the second best. It's very cheap for the best to just let you use theirs too. So it then also becomes about who has the most scale doing what they're doing. You probably heard a lot of conversation about chips. The US is trying to keep chips from going to China. We would like to maintain dominance of some sort in AI. What is less often said aloud is the United States would like to sell AI to the world. And to some degree, all of this is about, well, could a company in the United States be that natural monopoly that essentially exports AI to the rest of the world? And this is important for this AI winner question because if you have enough economies of scale, someone somewhere, maybe it does make it possible to sustainably sell people AI tools in a cash flow positive, old timey business kind of way. And if everybody has to do their own LLM for some reason, there's 400 people each using a different LLM. Well, they don't have a lot of economies of scale, and they might not get to that point where it's relatively sane and cash flow positive to try to sell people AI tools. So I would not profess to know what's going to happen with trade or to judge too much here what should happen. Just as a thought experiment where the US goes down a pretty autarkic road, where the story is we want to invest in the United States to produce things in the United States. And then maybe, unfortunately, we prompt other countries to do the same. And generally, we just all trade with each other less. That scenario probably increases the likelihood of AI winter quite a bit because it means nobody's going to get the economies of scale to make some of these really expensive, high fixed cost models make sense. And it's really hard to say exactly where the line is, but these two threads together, there's a general macroeconomic thread about what kind of interest rates prevail, flowing through what kind of investor capital prevails, and then trade sort of feeds into a longer term question about, for any given business trying to build these things, what is the universe of people that geopolitics allows them to sell to? There's a lot to dislike about a natural monopoly, but the natural part is important to recognize because some technologies really only make sense if you do have one actor doing it at a really, really big scale to try to pinch every penny that scale will get you. So if you're interested in AI, and also, if you're just an adult that has to deal with the economy, there's a whole lot going on in macroeconomics right now to which AI in an institutional business sense, who are the people building these things? AI in an institutional sense is very, very sensitive to. It's been so hyped, it's really hard to imagine it could just all fall off a cliff, but I think we all need to keep that in mind as a possibility, and it's actually happened several times before. More than you might think, the finance page of the newspaper is going to give you a lot of tea leaves you can read that are going to give you some hints about what's going to happen with AI in the long term.